Hey there, Smite fans, and welcome to the SPL Week 10 prediction video. And this one's going to be the last one for the spring split, and it's looking like it's going to be pretty interesting. A lot of these teams have already qualified, but there are still some spots open for Dreamhack as of right now, and so we're going to be seeing just kind of going through the week who's going to do it. And honestly, some of these teams are just getting some nice practice for their Dreamhack matches, and we'll be looking into that as we go. But we're going to be starting it off with the first game on Thursday is Enemy versus Allegiance. We've seen Allegiance kind of showing up a lot more lately ever since they picked up Weekend, but the problem really is that Enemy just lights out played last week. I thought they were going to split with Eager being a strong showing, and they made Eager look bad, and that says something. Like, it's not that Eager was playing poorly, although they were relying really heavily on DJ Pernicus, who wasn't having the best game of his life, but Enemy just rolled through them, and later on we did get to see them. They ended up 2-0ing Denial. It was a little bit closer for both of those games, but Enemy just had control pretty much the entire time. And as it stands, I'm done doubting them as much as I've said that in these 10 weeks. Enemy is going to be able to take this one relatively easy. If they went through Eager like it was nothing and only had a little bit of trouble with Denial, I don't think that Allegiance is going to have what it takes. Coming in for Luminosity versus Soar. Now this one's going to be interesting because I think Luminosity is going to be working a little bit harder, but I mean, Soar has pretty much proven themselves to really only be maybe contested by Enemy at this point. Nobody else has really been giving them much trouble. I'm actually really excited for Dreamhack to see Soar play against some of the EU teams, but as it stands for this one, I think Soar's going to 2-0. As much as I'd like to believe that Luminosity might be able to pull it out, I just don't think they have what it takes. Now for Envy versus Eager, as you can see, Envy has a completely different roster here. Omega and Snoopy did leave since they games last week that kind of got some really bad press because they early surrendered, but as it stood, Eager against the new roster that Envy has, and they're not going to have much trouble. As it stands, the fact that Envy is playing is really just kind of because they're in the split already. They'd get fined if they didn't play. That's really what it is if they don't play these games, they're going to get fined. And as it stands, they're fielding a roster. They have 5 members. They're going to come in and play, but Eager's going to be able to take that in a very easy 2-0. For Fanatic versus Dignitas, so Fanatic kind of showing themselves to want to be back up there, but I feel like they're just not playing at the top of their game. Last week when they played against Paradigm, like, I knew it was going to be an easy win for Paradigm, but it was almost embarrassing for Fnatic. And as it stands, I actually think that Dignitas is going to have kind of the same run through that Paradigm had. I'm not entirely sure if Dignitas is going to make it as big of a difference. I don't think it's going to be as huge a difference between the two, but I do think Dignitas is going to be able to take that one in a relatively easy 2-0. And continuing this streak, we have Paradigm going up against Torpedo, and like I said, Paradigm, honestly, as long as they just keep playing the way they have the last couple weeks, they're not going to have any trouble, and they did qualify for Dreamhack last week, so as it stands, we already know they're going. Torpedo, not much of a chance. They will probably be giving Paradigm a little bit of trouble here, but as it stands, I just don't see Torpedo being able to take even one game here, so I'm going to have to give that Paradigm 2-0. This match is very important, and it's really only important for Cringe Crew. Now, Panthera, as we can see, their losses have gone up to 3. That is 1 loss to Cringe Crew, 1 loss to Paradigm, and 1 loss to Hungry for More. And the Cringe Crew that took 1 game off of Panthera, I think, was a lot stronger than the Cringe Crew we've been seeing the last couple weeks. The Paradigm and the Hungry for More that took games off of Panthera were playing lights out better than the Cringe Crew that we're seeing right now. And the Cringe Crew, I think, might be able to take a game because I can't tell if Panthera is trying out new things because they want to get a competitive environment and they want to see how it feels. And I mean, they've already qualified. They're 21-3, but they don't really want to lose any games, and as it stands, I think Cringe Crew, as much as they want these wins, I don't think they're going to be able to get it. I think Panthera is going to 2-0 them relatively, not necessarily easily. They're going to have a little bit of a rough time with it, but they're not going to be very close games. Once Panthera starts getting ahead, this is going to be all in their favor. For Hungry for More versus Leftovers, about 4 or 5 weeks ago, I probably would have called this as a split, both of the teams being relatively even, but after how Hungry for More has been playing in the last couple weeks, they have been insane, and I absolutely have to give this as a 2-0 to them. Leftovers, they're not a bad team, but Hungry for More has just shown themselves to be a very, very strong competitor for what is going on lately. Cringe Crew versus Torpedo, these will also be important. I'm not entirely sure how many wins Cringe Crew needs. After those Paradigm games, if they do manage to somehow 2-0 Panthera, then we might be, this will still be important because I think that will bring them into the qualification for Dreamhack. But as it stands, after that, this won't be too important. I still think Cringe Crew has what it takes to 2-0 Torpedo. Torpedo's just not a very strong roster right now, and even though I think they have, you know, some really good players, they just don't have the team play that they need in order to take down what Cringe Crew has evolved into a relatively strong team. For Denial versus Randozos, this one's going to be kind of interesting because Randozos is definitely getting stronger. Like their team has gotten much better than they were the first week of the SPL this year, but so has Denial, and Denial has gotten, I mean, really strongly. They were giving enemy trouble just last week, and giving enemy trouble means a lot when it comes down to it. And honestly, Randozos, I think during the first 5-10 minutes of both games in this set, will probably give Denial a little bit of a scare, be a little bit strong. Randozos actually having a really strong, mainly solo laner, but also the rest of the roles are very good with their early game play. But as it stands, I think Denial is going to be able to take both games in a relatively easy fashion once they get past the 10-minute mark. Once again, we have Envious coming back, but this time they're up against Luminosity, and while I want to say a few weeks ago I might have called this one as a split, with the new roster that they're fielding, I just don't think Envious is going to have what it takes. I'm excited to see Dust go up against Barracuda because honestly, Dust is one of those players where I think he could be molded into a very strong SPL player, but he hasn't really gotten the chance yet. And I'm kind of interested to see how his debut week is going to be going. Obviously, his first game in the SPL didn't go too well, but as it stands, going up against Luminosity in in their earlier match this week, it's going to be pretty good for the team to practice. And as it stands, Luminosity is still going to be able to take this in a 2-0, but I think it's going to give some of the members of Envy a little bit well-deserved practice. This is probably the match of the week. Some of the other games are really more clear-cut. This one is going to be very close. Now, I'm not sure if any Dreamhack is riding on this. I don't know if Denial can bring themselves back in. I'm pretty sure Eager has secured their spot as well. So as it stands right now, I'm gonna guess out of the two of these that I think this one's gonna split. I actually think that Denial has what it takes to take a game off of Eager, but I don't think Eager is gonna drop 2 to Denial, and that's kind of where it comes down, is that both of these teams are really strong right now, and honestly, Eager has been kind of sitting on the back of how well, and it's a team game, so when one member tends to do a little bit poorly, and last week we saw DJ Pernicus was kind of suffering a little bit, they falter. And Denial, they do have some more, I want to say, carry potential on a couple members, so they don't rely on everybody as heavily, but when they play together, they play really well. And as it is, I think this one's going to be a split. I think Eager has a very strong roster and is going to be able to take a game, but I also think Denial has a very strong roster and is going to be able to take a game, and neither one of these really want to drop 2. Honestly, I think Denial's going to be hungry for a 2-0, but I just don't see it happening. I'm going to call this one as a split. And then for Panthera versus Leftovers, again, like I said, Leftovers is not a bad team, but when you end up having to face some of the teams that have kind of yielded themselves out of you, like Hungry for More earlier this week, you're just not going to have much of a chance. And when you have to put yourself up against Panthera, while Leftovers has good chances against people like Torpedo and Fanatic, I just don't see them having much of a chance against Panthera. Panthera is probably going to just kind of eat through them, honestly, relatively easily. I don't see Leftovers giving them much trouble. Maybe a couple kills every now and then, but overall, Panthera going to be able to control this one 2-0. And so now, for the very last week recap, we're going to be having Enemy taking it over Allegiance in a 2-0, just not having too much trouble there. SOAR going to be taking that over Luminosity. Those are going to be some fun games to watch. Honestly, Luminosity maybe being able to show up and might take a game, but SOAR, being the powerhouse that they are, I don't see losing one. Envy versus Eager. Envy coming in with a new roster. Eager going to be able to eat through them relatively easily. It will be some good practice for the Envy team, but as it stands, Eager going to have 2-0 on their belt there. For Dignitas versus Fanatic. Fanatic, while they have been showing a little bit signs of life, they've been playing a little bit better. Last week we saw Paradigm and Cringe Crew just kind of eat through them, and as it stands, I think Dignitas is going to be able to do the same. A relatively easy win for Dignitas. Paradigm versus Torpedo, kind of the same place as Fnatic, just not quite as low on the rung. Paradigm just being a powerhouse right now. Probably one of, definitely in the top 3, going to be going to Dreamhack, and they're going to take that one into 2-0. For Panthera versus Cringe Crew, while I think Cringe Crew is going to give Panthera a little bit of the run for their money, give them a little scare, I don't think they have what it takes to take a game anymore. The roster just hasn't been as strong in these last couple weeks, and Panthera has only really been getting stronger. They did lose a couple games in the last couple weeks, but as it stands, that's mainly because other teams got better. Now it stands, Panthera going to take that in a 2-0. Coming next for Hungry for More versus Leftovers. A few weeks ago it would have been a split, but Hungry for More these last few weeks has been showing how strong they are, skyrocketing themselves through the brackets in EU, and honestly being kind of scary. They did manage to take a game off of Panthera last week, and as it stands, they're going to be able to eat through the Leftovers in an easy 2-0. For Cringe Crew versus Torpedo, while I think Torpedo might have what it takes to give Cringe Crew a little bit of a scare, I don't think they're going to have what it takes to take a game. Cringe Crew going to be taking that one in a 2-0. Denial versus the Randozos. Denial having just got a very close set against Enemy. They did lose both games, but being close to Enemy means that you are very much above the Randozos, and while the Randozos might be able to give them a little bit of a scare in the first 10 minutes, they're not going to be able to take a game. 2-0 for Denial. Luminosity versus Envy. Like I said, Envy just having this new roster, it's going to be some very good practice for the boys on Envy, but not enough to get them a game. Luminosity going to be able to take those, maybe not easily, but they will be able to get them. For Eager versus Denial, this one's going to be a hell of a match to watch, and honestly, I'm very excited for it, but when it comes down to it, both of these teams are very strong, they're very powerhousey. However, Eager relying very much on how DJ Pernicus is playing. They do need their jungler to perform very well for them to be successful, whereas Denial has a little bit spread out more, and I feel like they're going to split. If DJ Pernicus shows up both games, they might be a relatively easy 2-0 for Eager, but as it stands, after seeing how they played last week, I do believe this will be a nice split between the two teams. And then finally for Leftovers versus Panthera. Panthera, again, just being the powerhouse that they are. Leftovers, they're not a bad team, but they're just not going to have what it takes to take a game here. Panthera going to have that in a 2-0. And once again, I'd like to thank you guys for watching this week's SPL prediction video. It's going to be a little bit before we have any more of these. Hopefully they will have a schedule for the Dreamhack. I might be putting up a video based on who will win a Dreamhack, and those games are going to be so insane to watch. And as it stands, once the fall split starts back up, these will be coming out again, but tune in next week. I'll be having an SPL recap video that I've been working on and will continue to work on until I have the final standings. Just kind of going over the whole spring split and what we can expect to see these teams doing. But as it stands, this will be the last video for the spring split. These are the last predictions until more get added to the season ticket. So thank you guys for watching, and as always, I'll talk to you later.